Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. We have a special guest with us here today. We are talking with Mr. Exclamation Point. Thank you so much for joining us to talk a little bit about Liberty and kind of the connection they have with BYU and where they fit in with all this conference realignment. So thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. For anybody that watched the previous video or who's like looking at the wall and going, why is there Boise State stuff? Let me address that right now. So yeah, obviously big Liberty fan, but also big Boise State fan. We just showed talking about Boise State and how things going to line up with conference realignment. A great video. Make sure you guys go back and watch that. I'm sure there'll be a link or something on the channel. You guys can go watch that or the homepage here for Saturday's Warrior. But big Boise State fan, big Liberty fan. And my Liberty persona is Mr. Exclamation Point. My Boise State persona is Bronco Blameyer. Grew up a Boise State fan. My uncle was the athletic director at Boise State. The blue turf was his idea. So all runs in the family. Huge Boise State fan. But when I started looking around for colleges, there wasn't Boise State didn't have Air Force ROTC. So they ended up not being one that I could go to at the time with the scholarship that I had. So I just kind of looked around for Christian schools with ROTC. Liberty came up, went there all 4 years, had an absolute blast. I would recommend Liberty to absolutely everybody. Great time, great campus, continually expanding. One of the newer schools out there. In 1971 was the institution of the school. In 1973, the first year of their football team. So newer in the terms of FBS football, fifth year of the FBS so far. But they are pouring in millions of dollars into renovations, upgrades, and it's a beautiful, beautiful campus. So I definitely recommend it to everybody. But yeah, I went to Liberty and I wanted to play football for them, but I ended up tearing my ACL in high school and I couldn't play football for LU because of that. And so I thought, you know what, if I can't be on the field, I'll be the best fan in the stands that I can be for LU. So I ended up doing Mr. Exclamation Point all 4 years that I was at LU. My girlfriend at the time, and then now my wife, said, hey, why don't you paint up as an exclamation point and you can attach yourself to anybody that's out there? Because I kind of did it last minute. I didn't have a group to go with. I said, okay, sure, I'll go do that. And there wasn't really anybody that I could line up with. So I just ended up kind of standing by myself and had an absolute blast. Got on the big screen more than anybody else that was out there. And I thought, you know what, this is fun. This is fun, just kind of being that focal point, that exclamation point to drive the fans' attention back onto the field and to, get the team pumped up and the fans on the sideline pumped up. I said, this is fun. I'm going to do this all 4 years. And so that's how the Mr. Exclamation Point came around. So yeah, Boise State, Bronco Blameyer, Mr. Exclamation Point, Liberty. People always ask me, who's your favorite team? Who would you pick if they had to play each other? And I said, I don't play that game. It's like picking against an adopted kid versus one that's born into your family. And I would never pick between those two either. I've got a lot of adopted siblings and biological siblings. I'd never pick favorites between either of them. For me, it's 100% in, 100% in both ways. If my two schools ever end up playing each other, I'm going to paint up as half Boise State, half Liberty, and just go and scream the whole time until I had to get taken to the hospital because my lungs popped out. And that's the plan. So, yeah, 100% LU, 100% Boise State, and I'm excited to talk Liberty today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you, and yeah, definitely go check out that interview. We talked about a lot of good stuff between about Boise State and college football and realignment and all that's going on there and the rivalry with BYU. So there's some really good stuff, and definitely go check out his channel. He does some great in-depth analysis. So you mentioned about your time there at Liberty and your path there. So can you tell me a little bit about Liberty for people who are not familiar with the school?
Yeah, so Liberty is a school in Central Virginia. They're pretty close to UVA, to Charlotte, right there. They're about Charlottesville, they're about an hour away. So kind of right there in the center of the mountains. Beautiful, beautiful campus. Great, great views. And like I said, a lot of different innovations coming through. But they're a very large Christian university. They get a lot of donors. So they have a $2 billion endowment. So when you start talking about Liberty as a football team, when you start focusing on them as a group of five team, they don't fit the mold of your typical group of five team because they're playing with Power Five money. Like I said, $2 billion endowment. They have so much money that's coming into the school that they actually are required to spend a certain amount every year or they will lose their nonprofit status. And so they're just throwing money at anything that wants something. The stadium has just got a recent upgrade. Ian McCaw has plans to turn that stadium into a 60,000 member stadium down the road. Big former Baylor athletic director. He's got big plans for Liberty. We just built a brand new training center for our athletes. We have an indoor football field that was that was installed while I was there. Massive. That's actually bigger than Boise State's. So Liberty, the money's money's going everywhere. And then they don't play like a typical new FBS team either. They were FCS for a long time there. They joined the FBS there in 2018. Yeah, 2018 was their first year in the FBS. It's been 5 years now, and they started winning right away. So definitely a team that you want to keep your eye on in the future because they're going big places. They have the money, the investment's going there. They're paying their coaches like Power Five level, and it's showing in their performance on the field. And they're going to have a big future here ahead of them.
Yeah, no joke. So last year BYU came to Liberty, which was great for me because I'm in Virginia, so I was able to attend that game. And in terms of scenery, I mean, BYU is set there with a beautiful landscape with the mountains right behind it. But sitting up there, I was up in the nosebleeds, up in the visitor section. But just the view we had, and then as the sun started to set over the trees and we call them mountains here in Virginia. The BYU alum might not disagree with that, but it was just absolutely stunning and nice campus. We showed up a little later than I'd intended, so I didn't get to explore the campus as much as I would have liked. But yeah, it was very beautiful in that regard, and that was my first time actually there visiting the campus. But something they did they that was mentioned a lot, and they definitely referenced it prior to the game, was how significant this was for Liberty. About how it was always talked about that we want to be like like Notre Dame is, and BYU, and obviously at the last year when we played. Liberty also an independent and religious institution, and so can you talk a little bit about the significance of BYU coming? Don't mention the score, the final score, but a BYU coming to play that game, and what that meant to the school and for its I guess progress.
I mean, that was a huge moment for Liberty. Obviously, BYU, they're a Power Five team in the making. I've considered BYU a Power Five team for the last 5 years. They play a Power Five schedule. They recruit at a Power Five level. They go out and they're on the national stage. They're not affiliated with a Group of Five conference. I have considered BYU a Power Five team, and a lot of other people do as well. So to have a Power Five team, BYU come and play at Liberty, a new FBS program, that was big just to begin with. We haven't had a lot of those. Virginia Tech came and played at Liberty this year as well. So that was another big moment, having a Power Five come. But having BYU come, it wasn't just the Power Five status. It was that they were BYU. So Jerry Falwell Sr., when he started Liberty University, his goal for Liberty was that Liberty would be for evangelical Christians what BYU is for LDS and what for Notre Dame is for Catholics. And he looked at BYU and Notre Dame as his goals of what a university should be. And he saw the way that they achieved that success was through their football programs. The success of the football teams for BYU and for Notre Dame has established those schools, made them something that members of those faith organizations want to tune into, and members outside those faith organizations want to tune into, and has established those programs. And so he saw the football program as a way for Liberty to establish that success. And so the fact that BYU came and played at Liberty was a huge moment. The fact that Liberty beat BYU, and the score that it was, and sure, I won't mention the final score, but the score that it was, the fact that Liberty was able to beat the team that has been their role model, that has been what Liberty wants to get to, the fact that BYU is an independent now going to a Power Five conference, that goal, that journey down the road, that idea of BYU coming in and Liberty beating them, it was like it was a physical manifestation of Jerry Falwell Sr.'s dreams, of his vision for LU happening on the field in front of us. Students ended up storming the field, and I think that moment, it was like Liberty was fully experiencing the dream finally come to fruition.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously with Hugh Freeze there, a great coach, no question, and Liberty had an excellent year last year, excellent season, and I can't remember. I don't think Liberty was ranked throughout the year, but I don't know if you were ranked when we played. I don't recall, but okay, after it should have been after, because that was a beatdown. BYU was in the middle of a slump. We were a super talented team, and in a slump, and we showed up like that. And Liberty, you could tell that this was a meaningful game because they came out and played like this game mattered, and it did, and they showed it. I mean, it was interesting because BYU started off slow, but they'd been starting off slow all year, and I think it was 3-0. Then BYU rattled off a couple touchdowns, and we're thinking, okay, like this is kind of what we expected. Now the floodgates have broken, we kind of gotten in our groove, and no, after that it was all Liberty, all Liberty. So it was very painful, but I stayed to the bitter end and did not storm the field. But no, so I'm happy for Liberty and for that, even though it came at BYU's expense. But um, what an environment. It was great. And one side note is we noticed Liberty wore these their uniform that they wore with a lot of white and red on it. The matchup, and we were like, "Was this on purpose? Or are they trying to look like Utah and try to?" They were very similar to Utah uniform, so I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so that was great, and obviously, as you mentioned, growing, and so we see that now Liberty. In fact, they'd already had it on the field last year, Conference USA, right there. So Liberty, they started out in FBS as an independent, and now um, they've been accepted to in the countdown. It's just days away at this point until they are a member of Conference USA and officially in a conference. So you can talk about why that move to Conference USA, why now, and what that's going to mean for the program.
So I'll be upfront and honest here. I was not on the Conference USA bandwagon. You had the fan base pretty much equally split between those who wanted to stay independent and those that wanted to stay Conference USA. And as the move has finalized and the inevitability of it all happens, there has been a shift in the fandom of, well, we're here now, we're going to Conference USA, so we might as well accept it. A lot more people are getting excited for that move. And I'm definitely moving in that direction. I am definitely looking at the positives. There's nothing that I can say now that would keep us out of it now at this point anyway. So I'm looking at the positives and benefits. But I will address some of the reasons that I had hesitancy here with Conference USA. So first off, even before everything happened with realignment, with most of their teams going to American Athletic Conference, they were the worst conference in the Group 5, or at least right there tied with the MAC. UTSA won 11 games. They went 11-0. They had a win against a Power 5 team. It wasn't a very good one, but they had a win against a Power 5 team at the beginning of the year. I believe it was against Kansas. And they'd gone through and they'd gone 11-0 with some very convincing wins. And they still barely cracked the college football playoff rankings. I think they were like number 23 or number 24 at 11-0. And then they lost their next game to North Texas, and they fell completely off the rankings and didn't have a shot at the New Year's Six. And that is reflective of Conference USA's strength of schedule and the fact that they don't really have one. And that was before everything happened with conference realignment. Now you look at the teams that are left in Conference USA, it's 10 teams: New Mexico State, UTEP, Sam Houston, FCS program moving up, La Tech, Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, Jacksonville State, FCS member moving up, KSU, FCS member moving up, FIU, and Liberty. So the only teams in that entire list that you look at as potentially having some strength in their schedule is Liberty, potentially, maybe Western Kentucky, maybe La Tech. But again, this is the bottom of the barrel here as far as the Group of 5. And so it is a step back from the level of competition that Liberty's playing, because they're not playing those Power 5 teams anymore. They've had to make room on their schedule for these regular season conference matchups, and they had a bunch of Power 5 teams on their schedule that they dropped, and they're now not playing a Power 5 until 2027. So the only way they're playing a Power 5 team is if they go to a New Year's Six Bowl, because none of these bowl affiliates that Conference USA has are with Power 5 teams. So that was a big negative for me, was the fact of how weak the conference is. There are positives to joining. It's great for Liberty's other sports. Definitely a move up from the ASUN. It's a great move for basketball. I mean, these teams might suck in football, but New Mexico State, UTEP, Western Kentucky, all those schools have done great in the past in basketball, even in the recent history here in basketball. So it's going to be a great move for Liberty basketball. I see Conference USA being a multi-bid, at least 2-team bid league for basketball, versus ASUN was win the conference or you're out. So it's a good move for everybody else's, all the other school programs. It's a good chance for some rivalries. You talk about, why are we doing this now? Well, the college football is moving in a direction where independence is becoming harder and harder to maintain. I personally thought that it was worth fighting for because of how bad Conference USA was. But the truth is that it's becoming harder and harder to be independent. All conferences are shutting themselves off, especially at the Power 5 level, saying we're not going to play Group of 5 teams, or you can only play a certain amount. You got to play at least a couple of Power 5. They're opening up opportunities like ACC and Big Ten has to play teams inside of their own conference as non-conference games. There's even less opportunities there. Conferences in Group of 5 are getting smaller as teams move up to the Power 5. So the opportunities to schedule teams was getting harder and harder. The road ahead was a rocky one. And I understand it, like we talked about in the previous interview, it takes an incredibly unique athletic director to ride that independent train, even before and especially now. BYU has been blessed with an athletic director that is his personality. He's been able to do that. And this is no discredit to Ian McCall, who's an incredible athletic director for Liberty, has done such a great job elevating school. But it's not about how good an athletic director you are. It's whether or not you have that personality. And most athletic directors in the country, they just don't have that. You have to have a fight for every single game matchup mentality that is going to absolutely drain and exhaust you. It is almost life ending eventually how much work you have to put in that position. And BYU must be breathing in massive sigh of relief now that they don't have to do that. So it's an incredibly tough journey to remain independent. And so the move to Conference USA at this time, it makes sense from that perspective. Liberty's been wanting to get into conference before they even joined the FBS. They wanted to go join the Sun Belt, but the Sun Belt wouldn't take them in because of some ideological differences. And so Liberty ended up petitioning the NCAA, said, hey, we're FBS ready. We just can't get a conference. They were given a waiver to join the FBS as an independent. So they've been waiting for an opportunity to open up. Chaos happened. Conference USA was at a point they didn't want Liberty. They still don't want Liberty. There's a lot of bias against Liberty, just like there has been against BYU. But there's a lot of bias against Liberty out there. And Conference USA didn't want Liberty, but they were at a point where it was either add Liberty and a few other teams, or your conference isn't going to exist anymore. And so they were put in a situation where they absolutely had to. So it was a move of opportunity. There was Ian McCall, that's his ultimate goal, was to get Liberty in a conference. That's what he's used to, being AD at Baylor in the Big 12. He's used to the conference play. That's his mentality. He wanted Liberty in a conference almost at all costs. And if it hurts the football program, but all the other school programs benefit, the idea is in the run, Liberty's able to win some conference championships, gets a couple of good winning seasons under the belt, and maybe move up to the American or Sun Belt down the road. So the question of why now? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that that opportunity is there, the fact that nobody else is taking Liberty in because of ideological differences, and the fact that it is getting harder and harder to be an independent. So while I have my qualms with joining Conference USA, I also understand the reasons why Liberty has made this move. And I am excited for the future. I'm excited for the rivalry matchups that can come out of this, playing teams on a regular basis. I'm excited about the theoretical path to the playoffs. So I don't see that happening for Conference USA when a better version of the terrible conference couldn't even get there with an 11-1 UTSA team, couldn't even get to near six. I think the Conference USA champion is always going to be on the outside looking in, unless there's like a 3-loss program out of one of the other Group of 5 conferences. But the theoretical idea, that excitement of what could happen, the fact that there's something to continue to play for. Like, we beat BYU, we beat Arkansas this year, and then Liberty had an unfortunate stretch where they lost 3 out of their last 4 games by less than 3 points, and that was it. You went to a meaningless bowl game at the end of the year, which we also ended up losing. And there wasn't any hardware from the season. Well, now Liberty can lose a few games in conference, and the season's not over. You still have a chance to go play for something that will motivate players to keep fighting, coaches to keep fighting, players have a chance to play for a conference championship, and that's big at any level. So there's a lot of pros to joining Conference USA. There's a lot of negatives. I don't think the pros outweigh the negatives, but at this point, there's nothing that can happen. I understand why Liberty made the move, and I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, having spent the last decade plus rooting for a team in independence, it comes with its pros and cons. And like you said, you have to be kind of positioned uniquely to be able to handle that and weather that. And BYU certainly was. Having a national fan base helped. I think Liberty probably, in some regards, due to the religious affiliation, may have some of that, that similar benefit there. It is tough not having rivalries and not, all those things that you mentioned, not having consistent schedules, or knowing, after 1 or 2 losses that your season, you kind of know, what the end is. And with bowl games, what they are now, it feels meaningless. Having said that, I don't regret, and I think BYU 100% made the right call to be independent when it was. A lot of fans got tired of it. Like, at first it was kind of fun and different and exciting, and then people kind of saw what it was and were like, I don't know, we got to play some of these big teams, but this, has a lot of negatives to it. Where it's hard to schedule in November. We don't get a bye game. We're getting beat up, and and there was all that, but it was that, or go to the Mountain West and essentially you could play for a conference championship, maybe have some consistency, or the American, or wherever, and but ultimately still kind of end up in the same bowl games, in the same situation. Whereas BYU is able to make more money, and really build its brand, and kind of label itself as kind of this Power 5 like team, building Power 5 like schedules. Last year we had, um, was it 7 or maybe more, P5 schools on our schedule. The year before that, we beat 7 Pac-12 schools, that we played all on our schedule, and so it gave us opportunity to, and we didn't start out like that. The schedules got, progressively tougher as time went on, and we built towards that. And we really think that that's going to give them a leg up as we enter into the Big 12 and start play there. And so I think you sacrifice some things, but it was a chance at a bigger picture. And I too, I don't want to rain on your parade because there's nothing we can do about changing it now. Conference USA used to be the feeder school into the other, they weren't the top of the G5, but they'd feed those other ones. And now they've been robbed so many times that the cupboards have been left a little bit bare. As you said, they're going to the FCS. But so I did want to see bigger things for Liberty. I thought that they could have lasted longer as an independent, but I do get the sentiment that realignment only happens every so often, and sometimes you got to take those opportunities, when they come. But regardless, I think last year Liberty certainly put themselves on the map. And what are your feelings towards them being able to kind of continue building on this momentum? They lose Hugh Freeze, but they had a great season. Are they going to be able to continue building on that, even though they don't have the same types of opponents, or how do you see that playing out?
Well, as far as their ability to go out and continue to win games and perform at a high level, I don't see that tapering off, especially the fact that their competition is much lower now. I expect the win numbers to continue. And we brought in an incredible coach in Chadwell from Coastal Carolina, who has an exciting offensive mind. He's done, I mean, he built Coastal Carolina from nothing, from an FCS school like you. Liberty. He built Coastal Carolina from nothing up to this program that is in the top 10, beating BYU, doing incredible things. So
You got to stop mentioning that.
yeah. So Coastal Carolina, they did some great. They're our rival at Liberty. Actually, I don't know how many people know that in the country, but they're like our most bitterest rival. We hate them so much. We have shirts that say "Beat Coastal." I got one in my closet right now from when I was at Liberty.
That's another thing that we have in common, because BYU hates Coastal now after that game in the COVID season.
They were so nasty, especially the way that they went after the BYU quarterback, and when I think it was right, and they were. I mean that's just Coastal Carolina. That's we call them the convict school. That's Coastal Carolina. That's their mentality. So it was incredible for us to be able to steal their head coach away, and then we've actually grabbed a couple of their players in the transfer portal as well. So it's like one blow after another against Coastal Carolina. So as far as Liberty's success, I don't see that diminishing. Jamie Chadwell is an incredible head coach. He's going to lead Liberty to maybe even higher heights than what Hugh Freeze did, just because of his offensive mind. If he can do what he did with Coastal Carolina, whose locker room looks like the storage room at a Walgreens, to be able to do what he does with Liberty and Liberty's money and their national fandom, 100,000 students online, 16,000 students residential, millions of fans across the country pouring in money to the program. If he can do what he did with Coastal Carolina and take that to Liberty, I think that Liberty has a bright future win-wise ahead of them. Now, my biggest fear when we talk about rising stars, right? Liberty, fifth year in the FBS, they are the winningest program as far as overall record and bowl game appearances of brand new FBS teams. They have the best 5-year record of any brand new FBS team in the history of college football. They've done amazing things. But and they were a rising star, right? They come in as FCS school, they come into the FBS, they immediately start winning. They get bowl eligible their first year, even though they're held out because of not being eligible NCAA wise. But they get the number of wins. They go out, they start beating Power 5 teams. They've had 4 wins against Power 5 teams, a 1 win against the top 10 team there against Coastal Carolina in the bowl game. They established themselves on the map. The win against BYU. Next week, the win against Arkansas, an SEC team. Those wins, we talk about what they meant for the school as far as, historically for the program, and it's referenced back to what Jerry Falwell wanted for the school. Those were huge. But when you talk about what they did on the national stage of the modern era of college football, that forced people to pay attention. People don't want to pay attention to Liberty. They want to ignore the program. They don't want to talk about their success. They want to push it off to other factors. But then you go out and you beat BYU the way you did, and then you go out and you beat Arkansas, an SEC team who had a great quarterback, and you go out and you win with a depleted roster with our third string quarterback, by the way. Bennett was our third string quarterback for the season. And you go out and you win, it forces people to pay attention to you. And Liberty was on that path. They were playing the national stage. They were having the big matchups. And now, unfortunately, you talk about BYU and their association building the national brands. You are evaluated based on the other apples in your barrel. Liberty was in a point where, like BYU, they could establish their own brand, their own identity. They could. Liberty is a Power Five future level program. When you talk about the money that they have and the fan base that they have, they rival a lot of other Power Five teams. So they're not deep. They're not playing with normal Group of Five money, Group of Five fan bases, and TV potential. They are playing with what is potentially a Power Five team in the making, and the ceiling for Liberty is completely uncapped. There's nothing that they cannot go and do because of their fan base and because of the money that they have pouring in the program. So they could have played several more years in the independence, playing Power Five matchups like BYU did, establish their identity, their brand as a Power Five type program outside the Group of Five, and then potentially make a bid for at least the American, and may go up to a top level Group of Five, or maybe make a bid. Things go crazy. The ACC, maybe some teams get stolen away to the Big 12. Florida State's not looking super happy right now. Maybe the ACC starts to crumble and they lose a couple teams, and Liberty gets a chance 4 or 5 years down the road to elevate themselves to the Power Five. Now they're in Conference USA. Now their wins are going to be basically at this level. The teams that I just mentioned, the College Football Playoff Committee has said that they don't care what your record is. They care who you play. They don't care that you're 11-0 UTSA. They look at your record and say you have one win. You have a Power 5 win on your belt. You have one win. You have no quality Group of 5 teams because they're all Conference USA. You have no other teams on your record that are high-level bowl teams or like a Boise State or a UCF or an American or a Mountain West team. They're lower-level Group of 5. So we see you as being 1-0. And now Liberty doesn't even have a Power 5 team until 2027. They're going to be looked at as 0-0 every year by the College Football Playoff Committee. Their best win is going to be potentially their conference championship and their bowl game beyond. But everything beyond that doesn't matter if they go 12-0. They're not going to get highly ranked. They're not going to beat out these other conference champions. They're going to be seen as, people are going to say, oh, yeah, Liberty's doing so great because they don't play anybody. Which is Boise State being in the Mountain West, which is a much better conference, much better program, has also had that same argument. Now, imagine that argument applied to Conference USA, which has a legitimate case for being the worst conference in college football, and there's no strength of schedule there. Who cares if you're conference champion of Conference USA and you win 11-1 in the regular season? Who cares? And so there's going to be this challenge of down the road, things start happening. Liberty, maybe they've been in the rankings of AP, they've had high success, but are they nationally known? Has their national brand increased? Do people care about them? Do they look and say they're worthy of being elevated, or they're just another Conference USA team? So I really worry about that for Liberty. I hope that I'm proven wrong. I know there's a lot of people on the other side of the argument that were pro Conference USA from the beginning that are definitely pushing that idea, and I am 100% behind them. I want to be wrong in this one. I want Liberty to go out, have much success, 3 or 4 years in Conference USA, and then chaos happens, and they move up to the American Athletic Conference and then the ACC, in the next 10 years. That's what I want to happen. But is that going to happen? Are they going to be able to maintain this level of success? Conference USA, unless at this point, Liberty's got to hope that every single other member comes in and does what Liberty did at the FBS level right away. They start beating those Power 5 teams, and then Liberty can beat those teams and kind of ride off of their success. It's all going to depend on their conference. Liberty's lost all of their control in this process. It now completely depends on outside factors and what the conference does as a whole. And with the teams that are in that conference right now, I'm not incredibly confident.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, all you can do is win games. That's only going to get you so far. Like a New Year's Six bowl, winning that schedule is probably not in, or a playoff or anything. That it's probably not in the cards for you. But that's all you can do is keep winning and keep your name in those rankings. And people get used to seeing Liberty there and associate Liberty with winning, even if it's at a lower level. And that's all you can do, because then when realignment comes along again and they look at, okay, who's available, you're going to have a strong case between, your funding, your facilities, and your record, and all that combined. Even if there is some perceived bias against Liberty, that's about all you can do, and bide your time. But it's frustrating. But I mean, the good news is, if they keep that momentum up, it's something they should be able to do in this conference. I mean, if you look at UTSA, they weren't on my map or radar at all. And then all of a sudden they had maybe 2, maybe more, but it was just a couple good seasons where they were okay. And all of a sudden people know, oh, the Roadrunners. I'm like, so it can happen.
Yeah. Again, it's just all about being reliant on outside factors. And that's the spot that Liberty's at. That's the spot that Liberty's at. They'll control what they can control. They are going to dominate this conference. They are going to be I don't know. You can't say Alabama anymore because they got beat by Georgia, but they're going to be the Ohio State of this conference. Not even everyone's kind of falling off the map. Clemson fell off the map this year too, but whatever. They're going to be the team that wins the conference every year. They're going to be that team, or they're going to be that team that
Which
everyone has. The Boise State. There we go. The Boise State of their conference. They're going to be they're going to be that team that everybody has circled and everybody has that red X on that game, and they go and they play their best games at. So there's going to be a target on their back, but they are definitely going to dominate this conference. There is some hope for the future here as far as outside factors. Sam Houston being a Texas team, that's a great football state. They've had success at the FCS level. They could potentially come forward and replicate that. KSU, which is definitely the worst member right now, the smallest member right now. They barely have a football stadium, but they're in Georgia. They're in the SEC type territory. They have that recruiting belt that they can pull on. There is potential here. It's just the uncertainty of the unknown, and do the future possibilities outweigh the negatives? If I was to make this decision again, I would say no, we don't join Conference USA. But as someone who's now stuck in it, I think there is a lot of potential here. I'm excited about that potential. I hope that I'm proven wrong. I hope that 5 years down the road, I make a massive videos making fun of myself and how terribly wrong I was. But there's a lot to be excited here. Even if I'm the most negative and depressed of any fan that was on this wagon, I'm still able to find things that are exciting and positive about this. And that shows that there are pros within this conference. And basketball is going to be great. There's a lot of outside factors that could end up happening, pushing Liberty to the next level. And like you said, UTSA, team that nobody knows about. They have a couple of great wins. Chaos happens. American gets picked over by the Big 12, and now they need some teams. They elevate them. It'll just have to be the question of, are those same factors that kept Liberty out this time around from the Sun Belt and from American Athletic Conference, who were both hurting for teams, those same factors, those ideological differences that kept Liberty out of them, is their overall winning ways going to be enough to put them into those conferences? We'll have to see. If enough chaos happens, like it did at Conference USA, maybe they'll have to. If the future, though, is not in Liberty's hands. But you know what? Ultimately, it's in God's hands, and so we're okay.
Well, great. Yeah, I understand that BYU's throughout time felt like they've been slighted due to the religious affiliation, and it is what it is. All you can do is, like you said, keep winning and do what's in your power, and that's win the games that are in front of you and keep building the program. So I hope so, and I would even I'd say it'd be great to see BYU and Liberty play again sometime down the road. Although after this last year, I don't know if that'll happen, or maybe BYU wants revenge. I don't know, but anyway, well, great. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating. I hope all the Liberty fans out there, I wish them the best, as with your foray into Conference USA. And for anybody who's less familiar with Liberty, you got to watch them. They definitely been playing a fun brand of football. I know firsthand. So, but yeah, thank you again. And could you remind everybody how they can follow you and see your content?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the biggest one is Liberty Flames Nation. I started the group 3 years ago, and we're up over 8,000 members now. So it's a rapidly growing fan group. So definitely join Flames Nation, Liberty Flames Nation on Facebook. And then you can also follow me on Twitter, Mr. Exclamation Point. And then I also have a Liberty-focused news site called The Point that we are right now having some website technical difficulties, but we're going to get that back up again. And you can follow my articles I write there for Liberty-focused athletic news. I've got a great core of writers that are doing a great job over there as well. So, yeah, big one there is Liberty Flames Nation on Facebook. And thanks so much for having me on. And go Flames!